How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of your favorite swimbait podcast, Scales and Tails, episode 166. We're joined by another gentleman from Pennsylvania. We just had Cody on 2 weeks ago when you're listening to this, but it was only a couple days ago when we're recording this. We had Mr. Andrew Hinkle on last week, and we were joined by another Pennsylvania. And, we haven't had, I looked back and I think maybe we had one or two guys from Pennsylvania, but it's been a very long time. And within the last 3 weeks, we've had two of them. So it'll be very interesting to see kind of Cody's fishing versus our guest today's fishing, and kind of hear our guests fishing, kind of how he got into it. If you guys are familiar with Swimbait Universe, maybe you're familiar with seeing his posts. I was actually scrolling through his posts today, doing a little homework, and there was some pictures that I saw, some smallmouth on some very large baits that we're definitely going to end up talking about today. We're joined by Mr. Kyle Reigle, all the way over there in Pennsylvania. Like I said, we'll let Kyle introduce himself as always, like we do with the guests, and then we'll get into the chronological order of things that kind of got him to where we are today. And then we're really just going to focus on the smallmouth fishing and the river fishing that he does. And it's going to be a really good episode today. So, alrighty, Kyle, tell us who you are, what you do, and we're going to be strapped in to ask you to really nail you with some hard hitting questions today, man.
Yep, hit them hard. Hey, thanks, man, Adrian. I appreciate you having me on. But yeah, I have a small Facebook and Instagram following. I don't really don't want to say I'm new to it, but Instagram I don't really post much on. Facebook for sure, but yeah, I guess I'll go into a little bit of brief background about how I got into fishing.
Yeah.
So yeah, like you said, here in Pennsylvania, um, born and raised here, and our state fish is obviously the trout. So growing up as a kid, trout fishing was huge. My dad getting me up at the crack of dawn, opening day of trout season. We'd hit the local diner, get some breakfast,
Mm,
can of worms, and we'd go down to the streams and creeks and be, asses to elbows
yeah.
up against everybody, catching our limit in 20 minutes and head home. That's some of my early memories of fishing. God, I'd probably say I was whew, 5, 6 years old, doing
Mm,
that. We'd do a lot of pond hopping, we'd fish some of the creeks, fish the river, obviously the Susquehanna. That's kind of the main talking point where I'm at here.
yeah.
For catfish, they're just everywhere on the Susquehanna.
Hmm.
Catfish is a big deal here. And then also I grew up playing sports, so I grew up playing a lot of travel hockey. So my, growing up hunting and fishing with my father, and then most of our time that got taken up was with sports. Travel
Hmm.
hockey, a lot of the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday practices,
Yeah.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday games. It didn't really leave a whole heck of a lot of time for outdoor hobbies. Now we made
Mhm.
sure we always took off a few days for the opening day of hunting seasons,
Yeah.
and same with trout season. And I've noticed as the older I got, the more into fishing. I just enjoyed it. It was like everybody, it was relaxing. It was
Hmm.
fun. I didn't care what I caught. I wasn't after anything specific. I didn't care what the baits were. As a kid, you just want to go outside and have fun. Um, so yeah, that's really how my background got started with it. I never got as serious as I took it probably in the past 10 years.
Hmm.
Before that, it was just whenever I had free time.
Yeah.
Once the sport stopped and graduated, I started getting into cars and street bikes, and I was stunt riding motorcycles for a while. And I might fish a few times a
Yeah.
year. And I always had my tackle. I was always driven to it. Um, and then, yeah, as of late, I'd say within the past 10 years, I really started getting serious into fishing. I started taking it more serious.
Hmm.
It was something that I started, I couldn't stop thinking about it,
Right.
and my buddies they kind of relit the torch for me with fishing. Like I said, I had no problem picking up a rod and reel and casting, after all those years. But it was probably it'll probably be about 10 years ago. This coming February 1st will be 10 years of sobriety. And that was a big deal because my first year of sobriety, a couple of my buddies were fishing the river.
Hmm.
Two of my good friends were, chasing smallmouth.
Yeah.
And, I started talking to them again, childhood friends, and had cleaned my act up, and they kind of got the ball rolling. And I just ventured off from there. It went from the bank fishing, again on the main stem or creeks, all the tributaries through the river. Um, and then it kind of turned into I wanted to get off the banks, and what's the easiest way is to get a kayak,
Yeah.
so I got a cheap kayak, and that got me off the banks.
Hmm.
Did that for several years, and this is all conventional. I fished a
Right.
lot of conventional tackle. I know we're going to talk mostly about the swim baits
Hmm.
and these smallmouth, but I really cut my teeth with conventional tackle for sure.
Yeah.
That was a big thing. That's what everybody was throwing. That's what my
Right.
buddies were throwing. That's what you'd see at the stores. You're not finding a lot of the big baits, at least then, 10 years ago in the stores, kind of like you are now.
Hmm.
So yeah, it was just a rabbit hole of buying jerk baits and tubes and Ned rigs and spinner
Yeah.
baits and whatever worked for that time of year. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And I feel like realistically, conventional fishing in the river is kind of like the way you learn to read the water, way you kind of learn where laydowns and rock piles are and stuff like that. And
oh yeah,
I mean, it's expensive. Probably the first year or two, you're gonna hang up and break off a lot of baits, but a river only
yeah.
changes so much. So once you kind of have that mapped out in your head, it seems like it's more efficient to get into swim bait fishing than the river, the small little river that I used to live on when I was down south for those couple years. I got my teeth kicked in the first couple weeks with swim baits, and then I went out with a Nico style worm, and I just hammered the fish on jerk baits and in tubes, and I was like, oh, okay, like I know where these fish set up, I know where there's structure, how deep I can run a bait, and in the long run,
Sure.
it helps save money. You're not hanging up a bunch of swim baits or whatnot, and you're also really kind of eliminating dead water almost. Not necessarily that fish don't move in rivers, but that
Yeah.
these pockets are all sand. It's a sand flat that's only 2 feet deep. There's not any fish there for this 50-yard stretch. I'm just gonna keep going to get to the good spot. So I feel like river fishing, it definitely helps to have a conventional background with that sort of fishing.
It does. It, our river is fluctuates so much.
Hmm.
It could be at 2.5 feet,
Yeah.
and then we'll get a rise. It'll blow out to 10 feet.
Mm.
So it's not just figuring out what baits work for what time of year. It's also
Mhm.
you don't know the water's going to be like in a week or two.
Yeah.
I got a lot of friends that are guides on the river. A couple of them that they always they have clients that book and they say, "Hey, man, the weather's looking great." Well, they don't know. They might book a month or two in advance, and
Yeah.
or if longer, and you don't know what the water's going to be like.
Mhm.
And for those guys, my buddies that guide, they have to adjust to that.
Yeah.
And they're fishing conventional methods, but they're still having to adjust, and put guys on fish. So
Mhm.
even going out fun fishing, you might only have that one day of the week to go out, and you want to be safe. You got to
Yeah.
watch your river levels. That's something that, we have deaths on the water.
Mhm.
I mean, it happens. Guys don't. I don't know if they just don't check the gauge, if they don't understand the current or what, but guys will go over dams, they'll get washed away in
Yep.
creeks, and it happens every year. There's always a report of somebody missing, somebody stranded,
Mm.
or somebody going over a dam and dying.
Yeah.
It happens, so you got to be safe out there. But yeah, conventional tackle for sure with an ever-changing river was huge. I'd say, other than surface baits, probably jerk baits were
Mm.
some of my most favorite ways to catch them.
Yeah.
I it it When I got into swim bait fishing, I realized that it kind of translated
Mhm.
because I enjoyed imparting the action
Yep.
into the jerk bait. Um, and not just slow retrieving, slow reeling, just, you're putting the action into the bait.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I caught my PB on a jerk bait. It's 5 pounds, 2 ounces.
That's a monster
And
river
we're
fish.
about, yeah, there's plenty of fives out there.
Wow.
It wasn't that long ago. There's a guy that caught one in the 7 pound range. Now he was up further. It wasn't exactly, around our area
Mhm.
locally, but it was still a river smallmouth. Um, and I've always said, I know there's fives in there. There's got to be a six,
You're right.
and that's my whole thing is I want to catch, obviously I want to break my PB on swim baits,
Hmm.
but haven't yet, and I'm still enjoying throwing them. It's not always the goal, but, but yeah, anyways, just to go back to that, the conventional definitely helped. Um, it's been this is 2 years now, so I'll say I'm fairly new to the big bait game.
Hmm.
Just the swim baits in general, whether it's the hard baits, the soft baits. I got 2 years under my belt.
Wow.
Um, I haven't picked up a conventional rod in those 2 years. So
Wow.
that was I told myself just I'm gonna go out, and because I used to do it with conventional. If I wanted to fish, a flat side crankbait or a bait that maybe nobody else was throwing or something that I wasn't familiar with,
Hmm.
I would take just that rod
Yep.
and just
Yeah.
that bait and learn.
Hmm.
Um, I did that with the big bait stuff. I shouldn't say that. Not at first. At first, I bought one rod, one reel, and I had probably, yeah, because this is about two years ago. I had a handful of hard baits. I had a couple eye slides, a couple citizens, and I had a Depths 175
Mm.
before I even had a rod or reel to throw it.
Yeah.
I kind of made my mind up. I said, look, I'm gonna throw big baits. I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to throw, what
Yeah.
I liked, what I thought was neat. And just to go back to that 10 years of, when I first got sober, that's kind of when, again, my fishing kicked in again and I started getting into the YouTube scene,
Yeah.
of looking up fishing stuff, right? I came across Oliver Nye and
Mm.
I'm like, what is this guy doing? Like, the size of the baits,
Yep.
right? I saw what he was doing and I was just blown away. Then you stumble into Butch Brown, and then 2015, there's Gilbert. And I'm like,
Yep.
I have kind of a skateboard background
Mm.
and I see what he was doing. All the what I would consider like the OG guys,
Right.
that were throwing it. I was just so impressed with Manny Chi in Arizona. Like
Yep.
I was blown away with what they were able to do
Yeah.
with these big baits. But it wasn't in PA, it wasn't
Mm.
on a river system,
Yep.
and they were largemouth. And that's what everybody, it wasn't. I could not find any info on, guys just, and not that I wanted to say, okay, here's how you do it. It was
Right.
mostly, I just wanted the content.
Yep.
I wanted to see what guys could do with these big baits and smallmouth. And I told my buddy, I said, dude, I'm going to do it. I remember coming back from lunch, driving back to my job, and I told him, I said, I'm going to start ordering baits. Um, for those 10 years before I finally pulled the trigger on the baits, I had pretty good. I was familiar with different rods and reels. I already
Right.
did some research. I knew Lowdown Customs from years ago.
Mhm.
I've heard of F5, um, and it was an F5 blacklist that dropped. It looked cool. They had great reviews. I pulled the trigger on it. So I had the rod, and then I bought a 300 size Tatula, a Daiwa reel. Um, and this is how green I was because I got the rod and reel set up and I bought the 20 pound, I don't even know what I threw on at the time. It was fluoro. It was some kind of fluoro. I went through 6 different brands of fluoro,
Wow.
until I stumbled on, the Seagar that I like. But,
Mhm.
yeah, I had got the rod and reel and quickly realized that my little, well, what I would consider little, 1 to 3 ounce baits did not need a 300 size reel.
Right.
So I ended up buying a 200. And I don't like to save stuff. If I'm not using
Mm.
something, I'll trade it or sell it and put
Hmm.
it towards other tackle, other gear. And I actually sold the 300 to a guy local. I met up with him, and then come to find out, I would need the 300 later on
Yeah.
to, you know. Um, so yeah, I ended up waiting for a lowdown drop, and next thing you know, I got 5, 6 swim bait rods, and just again went down the rabbit hole like everybody else. I
Hmm.
spun out. I spun
Yeah.
out a little bit. Um, God, you'd laugh because I like to run the GoPro and do some cast to catch,
Mm.
and I would buy $100 bait, and I mean, I probably look like a guy on the bank fishing from like with a surf rod.
Yeah.
I'm hanging it
Hucking
back,
it.
and I'm all slow, and it's and I mean just total noob style, fishing, and next thing you know, now I'm throwing them out there like they're jerk baits. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Um, like nothing. So yeah, it's steep learning curve, man. There's not enough guys that are willing to, I don't want to say take the risk, but like guys don't want to put themselves out there and maybe
Hmm.
like try something different, out some stuff out of the box. Um, I went several trips before I ever got a bite. I didn't know what I was doing.
Hmm.
I went probably 5 or 6 trips of just skunking,
Yeah.
and just not knowing what I'm doing. Just
Hmm.
how do I fish this? Because you
Right.
can always watch a video of a bait. If I
Hmm.
want to buy a tiny clash,
Yeah.
okay, great. I'm going to look up how they fish it. Well, they're fishing them in either a test tank,
Yep.
or a lake that's clear.
Hmm.
The water's clear, so you can see the action. I got to deal with current where
Yeah.
I'm at.
Which is a
So
pain.
yes, current has been a huge deal with, again, all the YouTube stuff that's out there. Like, I take it all with a grain of salt
Hmm.
because I have to figure out how I'm going to fish these baits in a current system,
Yeah.
and we have slack water here and there, it's
Right.
like we got slack pockets and whatnot, but current is the number one thing, and shallow at
Hmm.
that. So river's very shallow, fast moving current. Um, it's tricky. It's not the calm lake stuff. I'll shore bang with my son. He's 5. We'll go to lakes and ponds and throw the big stuff there just because he's 5 and
Hmm.
likes to play in the dirt and water. He goes out in the boat sometimes, but um, he's at that age where like he thinks fishing's cool. He likes it, but he'd rather dig for worms
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just be outside.
Right. Heck yeah, dude. So, man, so yeah, I mean, you were like watching it kind of develop almost. I mean, it was obviously already developed like on the West Coast, but you were watching it kind of hit the mainstream, and I say mainstream as in YouTube. And I'm sure that Butch was getting 5,000 views and Mike was getting 3,000 views. Manny was probably the most viewed guy around that time because he did the charter stuff. But like outside of that,
Yeah,
Oliver, because Big Bass was really popping off around then. But like that was that was kind of what it was with me too. Like I found Mike's video, the 17, and I binge watched all these guys right around that same time you did. And I'm just like, well, these guys are 1,700 miles away from me. What am I gonna do in the
right.
state of Michigan? How am I gonna put this to use where I'm at? And, it wasn't much longer after I had that thought that I just started buying baits. Like, same boat as you. I didn't have a rod, I didn't have a reel. I was using a KVD 6'9" quantum jerkbait rod to fish Huddleston
Yeah,
68s
yeah,
and stuff. And I mean, it
yeah,
was
yeah,
far
yeah,
from perfect, but it was like, man, like these guys are catching fish. Like I have fish here. Like I know these. I just got to run across the fish that eats it. And I did, and obviously I lost a bunch of fish because I didn't have the right stuff. But the fish that I did hook and like just see the tendencies of these giant fish is what really set me to like, oh man, like I'm gonna buy a rod or I'm gonna ask for a rod for Christmas and I'm gonna save up and I'm gonna buy a 300 size reel or whatever it was at the time. But it's funny how it was the same for you, but you kind of held off on it a little bit longer. But when you did, you jumped into it just like I did. It's kind of funny how I've talked about it
yeah,
before multiple times, how you go to dip your toe in, and for whatever reason, everybody just falls into the swim bait game and they just start. I mean, on Facebook, you see it all the time. Like, you'll see the same person buy 10 baits a week for 5 weeks,
Oh
and you're
yeah.
like, what is this
Yep.
guy doing? And you look at his page and he's been there for 2 months. You're like, oh, okay. And then the course over the next,
Yeah.
or the, over the course of the next year, he's slowly thinning the herd on what he actually catches fish with or what he
Yeah.
actually likes to
Now
fish.
he's selling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
He's
like,
selling the dogs.
yeah, it's like, well, I know exactly
Yeah.
what that was. I mean, I've talked about it before. I bought a Hinkle trout, a 250, a phony shad, and quite a few other baits, all in the course of a week. Like, one of my first couple weeks into swim bait fishing, and it was just like,
Yeah.
didn't have a rod to fish the Hinkle. I told Andrew the other day, when I got my bait, the first day I painted it, and then I said, and then the next day I had to go buy a rod because I didn't have a rod for it to fish it.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
it's
No,
it's
that's how it
funny.
goes.
It's funny how
Yeah.
that
I
works.
see I see this I see the same thing with guys that um it's you can really go down the rabbit hole, like you said. You can start buying
Yeah.
a lot. It just sucks you in. It's just freaking cool.
It's
I mean,
fun.
like
Yeah.
when someone asks me like why do you do it, like I can say, well, the conventional stuff got old, right?
Mhm.
I go out and catch a 4.5, 5 pounder on a tube. I don't even think of that fish. I
Yeah.
can't even remember that fish,
Hmm.
right? I catch a 3 pounder on a big bait and
Yeah.
I'd never forget. I still talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, it just wasn't doing it for me, I think. And that sounds kind of elitist with being so new in the
Right.
swim bait world. Like, but it's just, I just have so much more fun doing what I'm doing here,
Hmm.
and it's like I found this like misfit community of just like I'm home,
Yeah.
like I going from the conventional stuff and even tournaments, and I can get into a little bit of that, but like, the mindset of these guys from the conventional to the swim baits, like I still follow my best friends that they throw conventional year
Hmm.
round,
Yeah.
and I get just as pumped about them catching their personal best on a hair jig
Hmm.
than if they caught it on a big bait.
Yeah.
Like I've never thought like, oh, look at, that bait's too small, right? You hear a lot of the, oh, what's that? That's a small bait. That's not a, well, there's not a size. A swim bait's a swim bait.
Yeah.
I just think it's freaking cool for a 3 pound smallmouth to hit a bait the size of him. I just
Yeah.
think that's wild. It's
Yeah.
nutty. That's why I like it.
Right.
I want to catch a fish on said bait.
Hmm.
I don't care about the numbers so much, um, which a lot of guys get a little twisted with. They'll see somebody doing very well on big baits, and it's like then they want to go out, rush out, buy them, and catch that 20-pound smallmouth bag. And it's like, well, I'm not posting up my skunk days.
You're right.
I'm
Yeah.
not posting up the days where I caught one fish
Hmm.
that was 14 inches, right?
Right.
So yeah, I'm posting the hero shot. So of course it
Hmm.
looks like, dang, look what he's doing. But
Yeah.
um, there's some struggles there. My buddy always says, I don't want to suffer like that. I don't want to suffer. I don't look at it as suffering. I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly trying new stuff, and just stand out from the crowd a little bit.
Hmm.
I've always been a little off the wall and out there and different. And I feel like the swim bait thing it's just a good fit.
Yeah.
But again, that's not to say that 2 years from now I could be fly fishing for trout. I
Yeah.
have no idea what I'm going to
Right.
do. Who knows,
Yeah.
But as of now, I'm consumed. I haven't touched conventional in at least a year and a half, 2 years, and it kind of started with a tournament. It's a local club tournament, um, and I got to shout out Susquehanna Fish and Tackle because I went into their store. So we had a tournament that evening. We have one evening tournament a year, and it's dead of summer. And
Mhm.
summer weights they're low.
12
You're
pounds. Yeah.
15, 15 to 18 pounds. You're in the money, right? You're
Yeah.
you're doing good. Um, yeah, 17's more like it for first place. And I don't know if I was in for terminal tackle. Actually, I know because I just sent my buddy the pictures the other day. I bought, I don't know, probably chatterbaits, hooks. I was buying some conventional,
Hmm.
and the guys that run the place, Mike and George came up to me. He says, "Kyle, I got something right up your alley." He comes out with this big cardboard box, and he opens it up, and it's the 187 eye
Mm,
slides.
yeah.
They were out for 1 week, and they got, what, six, seven colors, whatever they have, probably a dozen of each.
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't even on the peg. They literally just came in, and he says, "Here they are." Now, the reason I had chatterbaits in my cart is because the river was blown out at that point. It was well above 8 foot, 9 foot. We usually won't fish them if it's over 10,
Yeah.
um, but the river was up. It was at the peak of, like, nobody's fishing. We all knew where the fish were going to be. You
Hmm.
know, so I go as a rider. I have a little jet boat myself, but it's a smaller jet boat. So I always went as a rider, and I would get, you get paired up with whoever your boater is. And anyways, I bought three eye slides from Susquehanna Tackle, show up at the boat ramp. I had my one swim bait rod and one swim bait wrap, and I had, God, they kill me to say the color or to forget the color because I can't. I want to say PMPB. It's
Hmm.
a neon pink
Yep.
chartreuse blue
Yeah.
eye slide. It's loud. It's obnoxious. Um, and the other two were, pro blue, very natural
Right.
looking
Yeah.
colors, because I do not like the loud paint jobs. I don't. I know they catch fish, but
Hmm.
they don't catch me.
Right.
But I knew it was going to be dirty, so I took a gamble and bought it. And yeah, as soon as I pulled up, I threw my tackle in my rider's or my boater's boat. And the guy next to him looks down at me, looks at the rod, looks at me, says, "Well, I can tell you, you ain't catching a damn thing on that." And he walks away.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right. I said, that kind of was stuck in my head, but I said, it's a tournament. We're not fishing for hundreds of dollars,
Hmm.
right? This is small local derbies. The guy, Jeff Gingrich, that puts it on, does a hell of a job with the tournaments. Um, he makes it fun for everybody.
Yeah.
Some of the guys, you'd think they're fishing on the Elite Series, but we try and have fun. But anyways, we go to a spot where he said, "Dude, we're on them." He says, "I
Hmm.
know where the fish are. We're gonna smoke them." And mind you, I put one split ring on the eye slide. I didn't change the hooks.
Yeah.
I didn't. I just pulled it out of the box, put a split ring on for the line tie. Don't know why. Tied off, and that was it. And first cast, we pull up to the spot. First cast, two cranks down, it's on, and
Wow.
4+ pounder. Damn. And then that happened probably 5 minutes later. Same deal.
Hmm.
And this water is murky. It's dirty. It's
Yeah.
stained. I mean, it's damn near chocolate milk. Um, it's why we're pushed into the tributaries, because it's a little bit cleaner.
Hmm.
Um, and it's less current, so you can actually fish there. My boater probably had well over 200 fish easily. He had at least 200 fish. He had just over 12 pounds.
Wow.
So I had six fish. Now you only weigh your top five,
Right.
but I only caught six smallmouth that tournament. I caught one giant muskie too, but I caught six smallmouth, and I had 21 and a half pounds to win.
Whoa.
So that was, yeah, dead of summer. Um, and that's when it kind of hit me, like, I don't want to say, oh, I'm on to something, but the fish had to show me, hey,
Yeah.
here's what we can do, because
Something
I was
clicked.
still
Yeah.
just, I was blind casting. I didn't know how to work the new eye slide. I had the original, I had the 185, you know, but the new one swam nice and true and
Hmm.
level.
Yeah.
It didn't roll, it didn't shimmy. I couldn't see what the heck it was doing because the water was murky. I was just going off a feel,
Yeah.
and yeah, my boater, he crapped himself. He ran down that next day, Monday, first thing, ran to the tackle store and gobbled himself up a couple of them. And yeah, I don't know if he still throws them or not. I don't think he does, but it was, yeah, that was the power that it really had. That's when it showed me, like, this is freaking cool,
Yeah.
because I'm not after numbers. I didn't care about numbers. I wanted big fish, but I just wanted to see what these fish would actually eat.
Hmm.
You know, that's the gist of it was, can I get these fish to eat these giant baits? And I mean, guys still think I'm nuts doing it. There's
Yeah.
not a lot of guys throwing them. It's starting to get more popular around here. You know, I don't really hold back with like, guys kind of know what I'm doing, you know, what I've been
Hmm.
up to the past 2 years throwing them, but um, you're seeing a lot of the kayak guys. Kayak's huge around here, and a lot of the 6 and 7 inch, you know, shag glides
Yeah.
are really blowing up here for sure. I mean, they're blowing up everywhere.
Right.
Um, so yeah, but I'd say after that tournament, my conventional tackle just collected dust, and
Mm.
it still does. My son throws it now. He throws all the Shimano Poison Adrenas. I had a
Yeah.
whole line of Poison Adrenas, a few spinning, a few bait casting, and you know they were nice rods. And now I just let him beat them up because you know
Somebody's
I don't
got
throw them
to.
that much. So
Yeah. Man, that's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
That's awesome. Yeah, it's crazy how like, I think I got my Hinkle in like 2016, and at the time it was like all garage stuff. Like obviously there was some stuff here and there that the S Waver, the Gancraft, the iSlide stuff was out and about. But, where I live, it wasn't in tackle stores or anything, so you had to order that stuff. But even like you look at it now, and like with Guggen Squad and Spurl, obviously, and Bass Mafia being like the top three big ones, like you can go, I mean, Dunham's, I don't know if you guys have Dunham's out there, but like Dunham's or Shields
we got
or
one. Yeah,
yeah, I was about to say Dunham Shields or even like I mean even mom and pop shops are now carrying the Berkeley Nestle and the Cole Shad. Not necessarily the
yeah,
crazy like the
yep,
original or the super expensive stuff, but they might have a Spro Chad Shad, which is like a gateway. Like you were just talking about the eye slide for you,
yeah,
and now you look at it and there's like if somebody loves fishing a kayak and they look over and they see the 5 inch Cole Shad, they're gonna be like, oh man, like $20. Like I
yeah,
catch fish on a 4.3 inch Kitech or whatever the Kitech sizes are, 3.8 or whatever, and they're like, well, it's not that much bigger and it's got a treble hook, so a fish will probably get hooked. Like I'll just buy one and I'll go out and I'll mess with it. And they go out and they start hammering fish on that, and they're like, oh, and they go home and Google Cole Shad on YouTube and they're watching videos and all of a sudden, like you said, there's an Oliver video or more so now there'd be a Milliken video or a uh,
yeah, yeah,
Matty Wong or somebody like that from the Elite Series or a really
yep,
well established content creator who's doing big bait stuff. It's Marshall, somebody else like that. Like, oh my gosh,
yeah.
this guy's catching fish on 11, 12 inch baits. Like, well, he lives in Texas. That's probably not what I could
Right.
do here, but then they watch enough videos and it kind of starts to eat at you. You're like, well, really, how different are those fish compared to mine? Like I could probably run across the 20-inch largemouth like he's doing. It's not going to be 7 pounds
Oh
because our
yeah,
fish grow different, but man, like I bet you a 20-inch fish would eat a 7-inch bait, and they get the Spro Chad, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is like you said, and I've said a gajillion times on this podcast. Oh my gosh, I can fish this thing like a jerk bait. I can partake the action and shoot side
yeah,
to side.
yeah.
I can let it sit there and fish will come up and eat it, or I can rip it back if I need to, or whatever else. I can make this thing dance like a jerk bait.
Hmm.
Oh my God. Oh, there's a 9-inch bait. It's called the K9, and they say you can fish that like a jerk bait too. And it just spiral, it just
Yep.
corkscrews down. And for some people, it's really the price thing that I mean, I say that as if I'm the richest man alive and the price doesn't bother me either. But some people are like, well, I don't know, $60 for one bait. Like I lose two jerk baits a
Yeah.
week, and they're $25 a piece if they're megabass. Like, am I gonna really
Sure.
want to spend that much
Yeah.
on one bait that I might lose? But for some people, I would say probably half or maybe a little less than half. They take that chance and they catch 10 fish on it and they lose that bait, and they're like, oh man, I got to get another one. I'm gonna catch 20 fish on it before I lose it next time. And it's just like it's a never ending
Yeah.
thing, and it's cool to see, but it's just crazy how like popular and mainstream swimbait fishing has gotten to be that point to where people take the
It
chance
has.
and do it. I mean, it's just crazy. Like I said, when I started, there wasn't really ABS baits out there now, and now there's an affordable
Yeah.
spot for any tackle shop to pick up. And you always have one or two crazy guys buy the baits, and then if you get hooked out, if one of those guys gets hooked, you have a lifetime customer as long as you keep ordering big baits for them.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, our local shop here, Susquehanna Tackle, they're hooked up with Buka, so they
Oh,
got
that's sweet.
the trick shads in.
Yeah.
They landed a deal with Clutch, so they got the darters. Trying to think, they've always had Spro stuff,
Yeah.
so there's a selection of stuff. They're obviously big with the Berkeley, and
Hmm.
um, I kind of have my thoughts on the industry,
Yeah.
and kind of where you looked at the debacle at ICAST,
Hmm.
with some of the it's a business,
Yeah.
it's a business, and I've really tried and put myself out of that corporate type, the corporate type
Hmm.
businesses. But is it needed for new anglers? I think
Right.
so. I
Yeah.
think the marketing that I might think is, you know, call it cringe, call it, maybe dirty or not truthful, or maybe not truthful is probably not the right thing to say, but just a little overselling.
Yeah.
That might not be what I need to see. It's not going to do anything for me, but that kid coming up, you
Yep.
know,
100%.
it works for them, and I feel like that's what I've been really trying to look at when I see these ads pop up. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure you get them all the time, and it's like Joe Schmo's, whatever bait, and it's like,
Hmm.
damn, that sure looks an awful lot like,
Yeah.
so and so's, garage pour,
Hmm.
that he's worked tooth and nail for, um, and I also like supporting the small businesses,
Yeah.
the
100%.
guys that are in the garage makers. I'm a one man show with my painting business.
Hmm.
I do residential and commercial painting, um, and it's just me. I take
Yeah.
on enough work for just myself, and I have to sell myself on a cosmetic upgrade.
Yeah.
And it's their walls are fine. They're choosing to spend their hard earned money just to change the color,
Hmm.
right? That's a cosmetic upgrade. And I kind of look at it with like these baits is, I don't need all these baits. It's
Yeah.
just I want to choose to spend my hard earned money and support the companies that I believe in. And it
Yeah.
might not even be a bait that works great for me.
Hmm.
It might be something that I've tried. I might like the company, and it's just not doing it for me, and
Yeah.
I got to give up, but I'm still going to support that company. I'm sure there's a bait in that lineup. I throw a lot of Mike's baits,
Hmm.
a lot of the working class zero stuff, and they work great, but there's some not for me. I don't throw his 9-inch Citizen. You
Yeah.
know, the 6 and the 7's cool, but the 9-inch, I haven't messed with it. But that's
Hmm.
also uncharted territory for me
Right.
too. Like I haven't, you can't knock something until you start throwing it.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, the industry though, in a whole is, I'm kind of, I look at the mainstream media, the mainstream, you know, companies out there, and
Hmm.
it is a business,
Yeah.
and then I kind of look at, well, how do these companies that I'm supporting, how do they tie into the mix, because they're also a business.
Yeah.
Of course I want to support the small guy, because me buying a bait helped feed them, feed the family that night, or
Hmm.
whatever it is. That's how I like to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but at the same time, if they have good, if they're you can kind of feel them out. You know what I mean? I like
Hmm.
to do some research on the companies and what they're about and what they've done. And, is customer service. Customer service is huge,
Yeah.
and I love supporting those guys. I love supporting the small stuff, a lot of American made stuff. And I buy a lot of DRT too. I mean, that's
Hmm.
just a staple,
Yeah.
DRT stuff's just a staple for me, especially on the river. But sucks when they get bit off, because we get a lot of toothy critters. We get a lot of muskie here,
Yeah.
so they're fun when they stay pinned, but they ain't fun when you lose $100 bait that just
Yeah.
arrived yesterday, and it's like, oh dang, oh there goes that.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
it's part of it. It's You can't get upset with. I know that that ghost. I caught fish on that ghost. At some point, I could go out tomorrow, and that a muskie is going to take that.
Hmm.
That's when guys see me throw that, they ask, "Hey, did you catch any muskie today?" they don't know. They don't think,
Yeah.
they think, oh, it's a musky bait. And it's like, no, it's, I'm trying to catch smallmouth with it.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I've had muskie dart after that thing a lot. You start to get good at pulling the bait away from them.
Yeah.
You can start seeing them coming, but sometimes you're lackadaisical, you're not paying attention. Next thing you know, just
Yeah.
gone. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, $300 face jewelry. Damn.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
happens.
Yeah.
It's
And
part of it. It's part of it.
yeah, and like we were saying, these cheaper baits like the coal shad, I mean that could get somebody seriously into soft bait fishing and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is such a blast." And then they turn around and buy, a mega bass or, they're fishing mega bass stuff or fishing the coal shad or fishing the Nessie and then they turn around and see the flat like the original or they see one of Mike's baits and like, "Oh, like wow, like this must be the next step up." I mean, you have the next step up with everything. You have the Z-Man chatterbait, the original, and then you have the whatever that next step up from the Z-Man original chatterbait is, the hammer or whatever it's called, like the
Jack
15.
hammer.
Yeah, yeah, the 15 or the $15 one or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
You have that with jerk baits going from the
yeah.
X-Rap to the Mega Bass, obviously 110. I mean, it's
Yep.
all across the board. And you know, there obviously is people that would never buy your stuff and they're just going to stick with the cheaper stuff. But the fact that there's a door there for entry, I mean, you're going to have people that trickle up to where you're at and want to support you, obviously. Like, I feel like it does more good than more bad. If somebody's fishing Citizens, you know, to my opinion, there's not a lower standard of a open pour swim bait like a Citizen that obviously you can buy for $6 a piece like a coal shad and catch fish on. I mean, the Citizen is a standard, but some people have to
Yeah.
work their way up to it, and some people are gonna buy that coal shad and be completely content with it, and some people are just gonna, they just gotta scratch that itch they have. It's like, well, what's this next one like? It's only $45 for two. I'm gonna try it, and then they're hooked on it.
Yeah.
It's kind of
Yeah.
and like you and I as anglers and not necessarily business guys are like, oh my gosh, these people are gonna ruin my bite, whatever else it may be. But I don't know. I just feel like it's a good thing all around. It helps the community. It helps these guys stay in business. And like you said, giving them money may push them to create something new that nobody's ever seen before, with no bait we have before, and that helps us as anglers. So
Absolutely.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I just feel
Yeah.
like it sucks that the flag 255 got knocked off, that whatever else there may be, that the Megabass mag draft and mag slow got knocked off. But if you look
Sure.
far
Yeah.
enough into the future, maybe that has a good turnaround somewhere further down. So I don't know. It's just interesting to see. It's interesting to think about. But we've kind of talked about that enough. So fishing the river with really expensive swim baits. I have done it, not
Yeah.
necessarily the Ghost or the 250 or anything like you have, but a lot of like, 6, 7, 8 inch shad style baits or shiner style baits. The river that I was living at didn't have very many fish over 3 pounds, so I was catching like the occasional 4 or 5 pounder on like the Wake Walker or the Flag 255 or the Darter or the Gracely bait, like super fun stuff. But this river just had a gajillion smallmouth and they were all stunted, and you really had to get lucky crossing over a good one. Where it sounds like you obviously have a little bit bigger of an ecosystem. You could walk across this river if you wanted to that I was living at, but you guys sound like your river maybe is a little bit bigger, obviously a little more suited to hold a good amount of smallmouth, a good amount of big smallmouth, and obviously a musky population. You were talking about catfish and stuff, so it sounds like you guys have an established
Yeah.
river that maybe beneficial is not the right word, but that's the word we're going to use here. But it was like it's almost beneficial to show them a bigger bait, especially if there's a huge fishing presence on the river that you're kind of making it sound out to be.
Yeah. There's a lot of pressure for sure. We get a lot of pressure. Like I mentioned earlier, the kayak scene has
Mm.
really gotten big. They had the Bassmaster kayak tournament out of it not that long ago, and I
Yeah,
think it was 2 years now. Hell, it might even be longer that they've been doing it. It's hard to keep track because I mean it's every day you see them
yeah.
out there. But yeah, lots of pressure. I mean, I tell her, everybody's like, hey, where can I go? Where it's, we got our river's 444 miles long.
Wow.
You know, um, there's several hundred tributaries that are like 200 and some miles. of just tributaries.
Yeah.
Um, the biggest thing is the shallowness of it,
Hmm.
how shallow our water gets. We all run jet boats.
Yeah.
And again, that's why the kayak scene is big on the river, because it's easy to get around
That's
in a
all you
kayak.
need. Yeah.
Um, yeah, it really is. It's all you need. But when it comes to a boat, a boat can be a game changer, but I still fish my boat like I would in a kayak. Like, yeah, it's nice to crank the motor up and run upriver in an inch of water.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's damaging at times. I mean, everybody hits. Like
Yeah.
it happens. So it's tricky, especially this past fall. Man, this past fall was rough because we normally get a good fall rise, what I would call a blowout,
Yeah.
where the river's it floods. It
Hmm.
might hit 12 foot, 15 foot. It'll get nasty. And we
Yeah.
love it because it just clears everything out.
Yeah.
All that junk on the bottom, all that rock snot, all that dead grass and leaves, blow all that junk out, pack it in for a week. Don't plan on fishing for a week or two. And then once it comes back down, you're on. It's the conditions are nicer. We didn't have that rise this year,
Yeah.
and it made it tough. It our fall patterns, as the water got colder, the fish should have been staging to their wintering holes, and they're swimming around like it was summertime.
Right.
It was so shallow that, like, they were almost on a summer pattern.
Hmm.
And again, that's just another adjustment that a lot of guys have said, like, damn, I haven't seen the river this low in years. I mean,
Yeah.
I saw rocks sticking out of the river that I didn't know existed.
They've probably
I'm
never
like,
seen the
dang,
light
look
of
over there.
day.
I'm like, that's
Yeah.
yeah. I'm like, that's new, man. And I got stuck a few times, and at my boat, whatever. These jet boats, they take a beating. You can beat the snot out of them and keep
Yeah.
going. Um, but yeah, it was definitely a rough fall. Um, but it's a big enough river that they still hold where you think they would.
Hmm.
We still fish the same type of stuff. It's like one day they're going to be on grass islands. Now, are they going to be in the front of the grass islands or behind them?
Yeah.
On top or behind? Behind eddies, ledges are a big thing. A lot of guys fish ledges. Um, Fast moving water. That's one thing, that throwing these big baits upriver. I like a lot of cast out to the side, let the bait just kind
Yep.
of drift down, and get behind the boat. And I'll even work it behind the boat and just let the current do its thing. And
Hmm.
um, yeah, like right now, they're moving into winter in holes, and they're chewing good. I'm a little bummed out because we just got on a pretty good bite the past week, and they were eating stuff that we wanted to fish and catch them on. And now this morning we had some skim ice on the river.
Mm.
So in PA, it's something that there's still open water,
Yeah.
but I think everybody realized that
It's that
this week
sign.
was awfully cold for us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're gonna see what happens. I normally take a week off before Christmas, and I go hit local community holes, winter and holes, and
Hmm.
there's always guys in the same holes that in the areas, kind of playing bumper boats, but everybody's catching them. Everybody's up there catching them. So I don't know if that's going to happen this year. Some years the river freezes, some years it doesn't.
Hmm.
Um, have I seen a benefit? Yes and no. I
Yep.
think I've had, like, this year I did really well. I know a lot of other guys did really well. A lot of 5 pounders were caught. A lot of 21, 22-inch fish were caught.
Hmm.
Um, and last year we didn't really have a freeze.
Yep.
You could pretty much fish it year round. Whereas the year that we have a freeze and you have to stay off the water, does that give the fish a break,
Hmm.
and it's less pressure? And now you think, hey, they're going to be fired up come spring.
Yeah.
I I haven't seen enough evidence to say yes. Like, because if that was the case, then I'd be wishing for a freeze each year.
Right.
You know, I fish year round. Like, I'll give up a month or two of a freeze
Hmm.
so that come early spring, it's going to be on fire.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. I try to figure them out, but it's like anything. Every day I'm learning something new, and Big baits have taught me so much
Mhm.
about our fish's behavior. It really has.
Yeah, so that's funny that you were talking about the winter thing because we've had a couple, I would say 3 to 5 like mild winters up here. And dude, I mean, like just like this year alone, the caliber of fish that we saw that we ran across, it's like I feel like it's almost hard to say, well, I say this, but like kind of same boat as you. I don't have evidence of me fishing these areas or me being as hardcore as I was when we had hard winters. But I mean, dude, you think about it, if the
Sure.
water only gets down to be 38 degrees in the middle of winter, January, February into March, like those fish still have a metabolism. They might not be moving around like it's 60 degrees, but they're also moving around a little bit more than they would be if it was 32.6 degrees and there was a foot of ice above them. So I don't know, maybe it's all a mental
Yeah.
thing, but I feel like when we have a mild winter, the spring bite just like starts up. Whether it starts, obviously it starts up a little bit earlier, but those fish are just like they're not as lethargic. They're instead of being of a full ice cube that has to thaw, they're only in half ice cube and they're ready to eat in April. Like I was
Right.
catching lake
That's a
fish.
good way to look at it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I
I
was
like that.
catching I
Yeah.
was catching lake fish on a crawler in April this year. And I mean, that's like kind of a characteristic thing of like Massachusetts and like the New England area of those guys just hammering
Yeah.
fish after the skim ice, starts to pull off. And so, talking to a lot of people from up there, up in the Northeast and just further north than I was, it was kind of like, well, I mean, if you guys can do it, like we have the same fish, you guys don't have southern strain fish up there, or, I don't have southern strain fish here, like why can't I do that? And so we did, and we had a lot of success with it. So I don't know, we'll see. This winter's already starting to shape up to be a little bit more hardcore than the last. So I guess this will kind of be the true year of if these fish, if we have like the same kind of caliber of fish. Obviously, it might be a little bit later into the year that we start to run across these fish, but if we still run across them, then I don't really care. I don't care when we catch them as long as we're still catching them. I won't bat
Yeah.
an eye at it.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, like,
Yeah.
man,
No.
we caught
Springtime's good.
yeah, yeah. Like my buddy caught almost a 9.5 pounder out of a spot, and that's unheard of for the state of Michigan. Lake or a largemouth,
Wow.
and a couple
Yeah.
winters
Yeah.
ago, we had like almost 30 pounds of largemouth out of Lake St. Clair, and like over 30 pounds of smallmouth in the same day. Like we caught a 7 pound largemouth on Lake St. Clair. That doesn't happen. Nobody talks about catching big green
Yeah.
fish out there like that. And so I don't know, man. It's
Yeah.
like everything that I know and everything that I've kind of run across, it's like mild winter and like the bite really starts to pop off. But is it more of a mental thing that you have longer to fish essentially? It's not crammed into a 6 month period, it's crammed into an 8 month period. So you feel like you're catching more
Yeah.
bigger fish because you have an extra 60 days. So I don't know, man. It's something interesting. But the
Or
river thing,
is it you getting better as an angler
yeah,
too?
that too. Yeah.
Is it each year you're figuring out more and more and looking back, like, whether you keep notes and go back, say, oh, what did I do last year? And, that can kind of play in it too. I've thought of that where I'm like, we're always trying to evolve and
Yeah.
get better as anglers. So if, if you think like, well, I really did good this year, like, and better the next year, like, did you get better? Did you expand your bait arsenal,
Yep.
or
Yeah.
did you stick with your same style of baits, but figure out a little trick with them? Or did
Mhm.
you do something different than what other guys do? I know around here, guys, if someone's going to fish slow and say the fish are on the bottom and they got to jig them up with little 1/8 ounce stuff. Now they're glued to the bottom until I bring a big bait over them.
Yeah.
And now they're looking up,
Right.
you know, they're biting when it's 38-degree water.
Mhm.
I had a great day on a tiny clash the other day. The numbers were insane. 10-inch fish, 18, 19-inch fish,
Yeah.
whatever. Um, and I was fishing it a way that I didn't fish it last winter.
Mhm.
It was just a different mode and it seemed to work. And then my buddy was throwing it another completely different way, and he caught some on it as well. Um, so it's just, like you said, giving them something different to look at can really can can be a good thing. I try and do everything opposite. You know, if
Yeah.
someone says fish slow, they've seen every tube and Ned
Hmm.
rig known to
Yep.
man on this river. You
Yeah.
know, they just have. And I'm not saying there are guys throwing some big baits on the river. You know, like a lot of people kind of know me as like you kind of just took over and throw nothing but swim baits, and that's about as far as it goes.
Hmm.
I ran into a guy in his 60s. I don't even know what the bait was. It was giant. He said he's fishing from bank. He's done it all his life.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
he's not on social media. He doesn't have a following, right? It's those guys, and it's the guys that are quiet. You know, there's a lot of people that there's more people throw this stuff than you think, and
Yeah.
I've run into some, um, you know, and it's like clockwork. You go out and catch them, and you want to post it on your socials. You know, you want to see. I like seeing my buddies' catches. I like seeing who did what that day or that week. Um, you know, you start posting stuff up, and immediately it's the message after message after
Mhm.
message. You know, like I might hold up a bait. You know, I might not explain what the bait is. It could just be, hey, I smoked them today on big
Yeah.
baits. That's it.
Hmm.
Um, if guys know what the bait is, cool. But a lot of times people are like, what's that bait? What's that bait? What color? How are you
Yeah.
fishing? The questions come rolling in, and I'm
Right.
like, I want to tell people, you know, I want to
Mhm.
tell them because I got a couple guys that are kind of dabbling with it, that I kind of keep in my circle. I fish with them a lot. But I didn't really have like a lot of guys to bounce ideas
Yeah.
back and forth from. You know, if anything, I had guys that would just hit me up for info.
Hmm.
You think they're your friend, and then next thing you know, it's like, all right, cool, you're ghosted.
Yep.
Now they're catching the same fish on the same bait in the same spot.
Hmm.
And are they affecting me? No, because I wasn't out that day that
Right.
they were, right? Or I haven't had a bad experience on the water where I rolled up to a spot and I saw somebody in an area that I like to fish throwing the baits that I told them about, and they're catching fish and I'm not. Now,
Mm.
someday maybe I'll look back and I'll look around me and everybody's throwing big baits and say, "Damn, what did I do?" But I
Yeah.
just don't. That's not. I really don't care enough to um for that to bother me. So it's just a lot of time. I have my son and my fiance and my business. I'm busy. So
Hmm.
having to text 15 people like about what bait and what I did it on, you know, it's
Yeah.
like, man, I don't want to be a dick, but
Right.
it's like, you know, it's not, I don't know. So it's something I wanted to talk with you about is kind of the social media
Mm.
stuff, you know, and because I know you've talked about that before, and and yeah, it's interesting when you're kind of doing your own thing,
Hmm.
you're having fun, and you're putting in the time, you're putting
Yep.
in the work. You know, I'm figuring out how to set my baits up. I'm
Hmm.
figuring out what hardware, what line, how much weight to add, how to
Yeah.
work, just how to fish them,
Hmm.
and then figuring out what the fish want.
Hmm.
And to have somebody just take it like that, and it's like, hey, if that gets you off, that's cool. Like,
Right.
but me, I enjoy putting the time into a
Hmm.
bait. I like learning them. You know, I don't want it easy. When
Yeah.
someone says you ain't gonna catch them on that, well, now I'm even more fired up.
Now I got to.
You
Yeah.
know, I want it even, yeah, now I want it more. And like, I don't want to throw what that guy has.
Hmm.
You know, I don't, that's great, but I want to catch fish on the baits that I like. That's kind of the, kind of what happened with the ghost, which we can get into that then. But um, I just thought that was just nuts to, you know, see what they would
Yeah.
eat and to try and stay in your lane, you know, like I try and stay in my lane, but there's not enough positivity in A, the world, and B, in fishing, and even break it down into the swim baits to go even further, like the whole swim bait community. There's a lot of positivity in it, but I think there could be a little bit more, you know, there's a lot of egos, and it's just outdoors in general.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's hunting,
Bow
fishing,
hunting is really bad too.
you know, yes, yes. Guys get spun out and it's cool. Everybody wants to be at the top. You know,
Mhm.
everybody wants to feel a part of something. Um, you inviting me on here is like I'm tickled, like
Right.
this is to me this is so cool to do.
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, like guys that get upset because they didn't catch them good that day,
Hmm.
but somebody else did, you
Yeah.
know, um, and they might have a bigger boat, bigger motor,
Hmm.
or
Nicer
someone like
gear or whatever.
myself that
Yeah.
right, I have a smaller boat with a smaller motor. I mean, it's a tin can.
Hmm.
It does a job, but I'm out there wrecking them,
Yeah.
So it's the guy in the expensive boat might not be doing good. It's like, well, don't hate me
Hmm.
just because I'm out there doing my thing. Like um, but I see that a lot. I really do. I try not to let it consume me, but I see so much negativity in the fishing community, and I know it's everywhere. I can't just single out like,
Yeah.
oh, it's around here or it's tournament stuff. It's a lot of negativity that doesn't need to be, and it's like I don't know. I get along with so many people.
Mhm.
Um, I don't mind talking to a lot of guys, and I try to keep my circle small, but I get along with most everybody around me, and in fishing. So
Yeah.
there's no reason to hate somebody because they're throwing a bait you don't like, or maybe they cut you off one day. Well, maybe they just got a text, a bad news text from somebody,
Yeah.
and they just didn't realize they cut you off going down the river. I don't know. I try and think of that now. Like,
Yeah.
man, that guy's just having a rough day.
Hmm.
Let him be. There's no point in, bugging out, flipping out. And I'll be honest, that kind of drove me away from the local tournament scene.
Mm.
I didn't fish many this year. I fished one tournament this year. Um, that tournament I told you I won, that was 2 years ago. Like I said, I was fairly new into
Hmm.
throwing the bait. So I like what I'm doing now. I like going out and doing my own thing and keeping your group small, but
Yeah.
also I wish more people were into it. It is growing. It's getting popular. It's getting popular around here. But I think it's just getting popular in general. Like you
Yeah.
mentioned, the mainstream stuff for sure. It's
Hmm.
it's definitely blowing up, and I think it's a positive. I do.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple points off of that. Yeah, like you think, dude, we'll be sitting in traffic and I'll just like look around and I'm like, wow, all these people around me, be it a traffic jam, we don't have traffic jams up here, but be it at a red light or something, and you're like, wow, like all these people have their own lives going on right now. You don't know, okay, so I don't think I've ever really talked about this, but I used to be a corrections officer and people would you'd check somebody into the jail and they would just be up in arms, screaming, hooting, hollering, crying, whatever it may be. And somebody told me once, another one of my lieutenants told me, he's like, you got to think like you're having a normal Tuesday, you got to work from 7 to 7, you're out of here in 4 hours. Like these people could be having the worst day of their life ever. And you just so happen that you cross paths with them. You don't have to make that day any worse. You can do what you have to do, get
Yeah,
them through here, tell them all whatever you need to. I'm sorry, but this is what we have to do. We'll get it all squared away tomorrow. There's always going to be a tomorrow, no matter how bad your day is
sure.
today. As long as you look forward to it, it's going to be a thing. And that's kind of like, sitting in traffic, somebody cuts you off or you get cut off in the fast lane or, whatever may happen. And you just kind of look around every once in a while and you're like, wow, there's 125 people surrounded me and there's 125 different lives being lived right now. You don't know what happened or what's going on for somebody's day or what they have to look forward to tomorrow. So you just kind of think, well, if I can be nice to somebody and make their day not bad, then I'm doing pretty good. Maybe that's going to rub off on somebody and they're going to make somebody else's day good. So that's what I had to say about that.
Yeah,
And then the other thing is you were talking about how guys with super nice boats or just whatever it may be. I think the thing as a community that maybe like irks people is they go on Underground or Universe or Instagram and they see all these guys with the like the Gomex's DRT handles, the Shimano Curados, the
right.
Leviathan F5, LDC's custom production rods, full custom rods, whatever it may be, and they see these guys fishing a $500 bait and catching fish on it, catching small fish, whatever it may be. And there's almost like there's a complex to that where it might piss people off where they're like, well, this guy has all the nice stuff and he's catching fish. And then it almost seems like I personally know because there was guys when I would fish tournaments who, dude, I didn't have nice stuff. I fished the Savage Gear browser with an old Abu Garcia round reel, and I caught fish.
Hell
Whether
yeah.
yeah, I mean it was
Yeah.
nothing nice to the imagination. Like I looked at people and I was like, oh my gosh, there's people online that have $1,000 setups, and I'm probably pushing like 150, 125, $25 reel and $100 rod. And I was like, well, if I can
Right.
prove to myself and stick with it and catch fish, like it's gonna be worth it and I'll buy something new. And these people would like just get so pissed when I would come back with fish and I was talking about how I caught them and they're like, well, you have all this stuff, whatever, whatever, and they'd go buy a bait and they wouldn't catch anything on it and they would just be pissed. Well, it's because you have a nicer reel. You can catch up to the fish when you hook them and they don't swim away from you or whatever it was. And it was like it's
Yeah.
almost like they what's the word? They like scrutinize themselves out of like taking the leap and like getting further into it. I mean, like I said, I had a quantum rod and a quantum or an Abu reel or something at the point in time when I first started, and I was like, well, I know this isn't the best, but if I can get bites and like see fish are intrigued with it, then kind of prove to myself that I can go the next step up. And these people, they just saw the end results and it never seemed like they wanted to do something. Like there's a guy who would comment like, "Oh, you caught that on $100 glide bait. Like I can't catch anything on my S Waver or my Arashi glide." And it's like, well, those fish probably would have ate your bait, but maybe you weren't doing something right. But they just lose all headspace and they just go to
Yeah.
the point that they don't have the nicest stuff. So that's why, because you've been doing it for 6 months and they're just not trying to start off. It's not working for them. It's a really weird thing. And then, on the other side of it, there's guys who have a lot of nice stuff who like literally shit on people for fishing Gomex's handles or fishing Pacifica or
Yeah.
Piscifun reels or whatever it may be, or
It's
a
pissy
13 rod.
fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's like,
Yep.
well, dude, like believe it or not, you were probably there at 1.2, so slow your
That's
roll,
right.
like
Yep.
encourage them. Like I said, I don't think it hurts to get people into swim baits. Like encourage them to do it. Their $12 glide bait's not going to swim like your $175 glide bait. Yeah, we'll just get that out of the way now. I
Right.
hardly think that there's a case to be proven there. But if that person gets into it, like we were talking about, if they get into it and they buy some Mike's Bakes or buy a throwback or buy a clickbait or, KGB or Depths, whatever it is, that's directly supporting people we support, which in turn is going to get us further along this trail. So I don't know. It's just a weird thing of quote unquote like elite swimbait anglers shitting on the new people, and then the new people maybe taking comments or posts uh out of context and like shitting thinking that they're getting shit on when somebody's just being genuine saying like, hey, maybe you should try out this kind of reel for what you're doing, or maybe this rod a little bit more stiff for what you're doing. It's just a weird thing that social media, you can't read somebody's attitude or context behind a comment, and you kind of perceive it how you do, and damned if I do, damned if I don't. It's a really weird thing, and it's just interesting to think about. When I was getting into it many moons ago, it was like I thought there was some like hardcore dicks out there, and then I come to find out I meet him in
Yeah.
person, and we're talking. And I'm like, oh, do you remember this comment? They're like, yeah, I was just meaning, XYZ. And it's like, oh, wow, I thought you were trying to like one up me
Sure.
because I didn't know what I was doing. It's a really, really
Yeah.
interesting thing. It's weird to look
Yeah.
back on, but you still see it happen, like you said. You still see it happening everywhere, not just the swim bait scene. I mean, hunting happens all the time in the hunting scene as well.
Yeah.
Car scene. I mean, it's everywhere, dude.
The new guys, whatever it is you're getting into, like, and I'll talk strictly swim baits, but when I see a guy on a page that's he's psyched on his, you know, whatever lower end, I don't even know what you want to categorize it in, budget glide bait,
Yeah.
budget bait, beginner bait, whatever it is, that um and you don't see the love for that. And it's like, dang, man, like I mean, yeah, I brought, you said about the S waiver and I mentioned the eye slide, those are bad. I was telling my buddy the other day, I'm like, dude, I threw it with him not that long ago, the S waiver,
Mhm.
because you forget about
Yeah.
these baits. you start to become like, you never want to be like, because there's some gatekeeping going on,
Oh yeah.
like there's a lot of that. There's a lot of guys that, like, okay, why am I going to throw a $10 bait when I have this beautiful work of art
Hmm.
$200 bait?
Yeah.
Well, there's a reason why I would go back to that $10 bait, because it works for this time of year,
Hmm.
or it works in this situation.
Yeah.
I have baits that I need to get rid of and I've given away because it just didn't fit a place in my arsenal.
Yeah.
I had too many of the same weapon.
Hmm.
I don't need the same weapons across the board. I
Yeah.
want something to do different calibers throughout.
Hmm.
Like I don't want to just have the same old. Um, so I do. But I do see a lot of people that are getting into it. They're new and they're excited. You can
Yeah.
tell, mail call, and you see their stuff, and
Yeah.
you know exactly. Like, it's like, dang, bro just came back from Bass Pro with his
Yeah.
gift cards. Like,
Right.
it, you see it
Hmm.
all the time, and it's like, that dude is stoked.
Yeah.
He's free. He's just excited, and you just don't see the love for it.
Hmm.
Sometimes you do. I don't know why, if it's the algorithm or what. Sometimes people are like really supportive. Other
Yeah.
times, man, they get flamed on.
Yeah.
I don't understand why. I don't see the reason for it. Um, and yeah, it just sucks to see that. It sucks to see guys that are into it and starting out,
Yeah.
and they're excited about it. There's always, I can go out with thousands of dollars of rods, reels, and tackle,
Hmm.
and there's going to be some kid with a Snoopy pole from
Yeah.
Walmart out fishing me that day. I've seen it happen. I've had a frustrating day, skunking, losing fish,
Yeah.
and I pull into the boat ramp, and there's a kid at the boat ramp just aimlessly, and he just 4.5 pounder,
Clocking 'em.
20 incher,
Yeah.
you know, I weigh the thing for him. Like, wait, what? Like, and I'm like, oh my god. So you can't let, just because it's fun to fish nice stuff. It is.
Hmm.
It's fun to see what some of the expensive baits can do. They're all works of art. They're all it's all, they're great, but you can't forget, your roots in a way, and kind of check your privilege a little bit. You
Yeah.
don't want to let it get to your head. And I see that a lot. I see guys that they just, oh, so and so said they were going to share my post and share my pictures, and
Yeah.
the company never did. And it's like, and he's like, oh, I'm not throwing that anymore. I'm like, really? You're not? Is it clout? Because
Right.
I'm not a fan of it. I don't want. I think throwback. I don't know if you remember. I chugged
Oh
a
yeah. Yeah.
pink lemonade. Yeah, like, I was just being silly. There's a long story with that. Like, I thought it was cool. I'm like, let me see if I can do this.
Hmm.
But it blew up. And I started getting all like this Instagram. So I told my buddy, I'm like, dude, I don't know these guys.
Yeah.
And
They're
I'm
just
like, and
running
they're
across
hitting
the
me up
post.
like, well, most of them were trying to buy the bait because they
Oh.
wanted that pink lemonade. Now,
Yeah.
there was a lot of that, um, which I think Kyle's coming out with another run of them.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, maybe, I don't know. I just read the emails, but yeah, that's stuff like that. Like, it can get to your head, and I've
Hmm.
always tried to stay like just grounded,
Yeah.
and not feel like, oh, that's cool, because I'm still so new with swim baits. I don't mind admitting that, and I
Mhm.
don't mind admitting there's so much more for me to learn. Um, and again, I absorb it all: podcasts,
Yeah.
YouTube, everything, just down the line. I listen to it while I'm at work. I listen to it in the evenings, and whenever I have free time,
Hmm.
I'm consuming something fishing related. And believe it or not, it ain't all about big baits. It's
Yeah.
not. I'll listen to some podcasts where they're talking about blade baits and hair jigs, and I'm
Right.
like, damn, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like, I just find it all cool.
Right.
Like, we're all after the same fish. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I'm not all of us, but we're all out there on the water doing
Yeah.
something to catch a fish, no
Yeah.
matter the species.
Hmm.
We got, like I said, we got catfish up here. There's guys that go out and they'll tie on 6 pound test, like the lightest line they can get away with, and catch
Yeah.
50 pound, 20 to 50 pound, you know,
It's crazy.
flatheads,
Yeah.
and they eat our smallmouth and put a hurting on our smallmouth. I've seen there's some guys that have pulled out some 20-inch carcasses out of a bull, a flathead's
Yeah.
gullet. Not saying they don't eat them, but I mean the fishing's still good, man,
Right.
and it's still good where they're finding them.
Yeah.
It's been like that every year. Guys it's just the bite windows,
hmm Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, we're gonna take a break real quick. I'm gonna go to the bathroom and then we're gonna come back. We're gonna talk about the big bait fishing you've been doing the last couple of weeks, the last couple of months, because it's something I want to
you
talk
got it.
about, and it'll be good to unwind and kind of hear about how you're really keying in on these fish with these gigantic baits. So it'll be
Yeah,
instant for you guys, but
absolutely.
we'll be back here in just a second, everybody.
All right.
Alrighty, guys, we're back. We're gonna talk to Kyle about fishing the Ghost, the 250. I mean, like some baits that are pretty big for largemouth, let alone river smallmouth. I mean, we'll preface by saying river smallmouth are, I think, the most aggressive form of bass you can get. Lake smallmouth are aggressive, but river smallmouth, in my experience, they will come up and they will just hit the crap out of anything. The hard thing that I've run across is getting hooks. That is the biggest thing that I always have a problem with. But I mean, Kyle's out there and if you go on Facebook and look him up and stuff, there's pictures of him with the Ghost and with the 250 and stuff, and obviously with the TK and everything like we've been talking about. But what was your what was like the reason you decided to go out with like your first big bait, if it was the 250 or the Ghost or something else? Like what did you think, what was the mindset of going out there with those baits?
Yeah, it was the 250. I had several of the 175s, and they caught fish, and it was, again, I don't want to say I was getting bored of it, but I knew that there was a whole nother category of big baits. I knew they would eat a 4-inch bait, a 5-inch, a 6-inch, a seven. I wanted to see how far they would go, and honestly, I didn't know if anybody had done it. I kind of looked at it as a challenge.
Yeah.
I saw a few guys, I think, was it Austin Neary?
Yeah.
He talked about the 250, um, and he talked about that, the front, the
hmm
the front hook off the line tie,
Yep.
um, adding a split ring. And in the video, it was a 4-pound smallmouth. That was it. It was the only thing I seen. I might have seen some pictures of guys throwing it, but I knew at least around here, um, I didn't see anybody catching them on baits that big. Um, I, I I quickly learned that I got my pants pulled down several times.
Yeah.
Stock hardware, bent hooks. I wasn't going to throw, and it was a mistake of not setting the baits up properly
hmm
and just throwing them out of the box.
Yeah.
Nothing against the stock hooks, but I don't run them. I don't like the stock hooks on the depths. Um, I'll change them out to owners. Experimenting with some Gamakatsus, split rings as well, and then of course getting them to suspend right in the current. But when I started getting bit, my first bite on the 250 was right at the boat,
mm
and it was springtime last year, and that's all I needed to see. And it wasn't a big fish,
Yeah.
and it was kind of a reaction bite. It was just me working it slow. And then right when I was ready to make another cast, I reeled up quick, and oh dang, there's one swirled on it and gone, bent the hook right out.
Yeah.
That happened multiple times. I got hit a lot of times fishing the 250, and then I started setting it up right. I had the line, the line dialed in, the right rod. That was a big thing. I kind of geek out on the rods and reels, and I don't own many, but I have a rod for each bait that I like, within that ounce rating. So I thought I was doing everything I could do to set up, correctly to catch these fish. Because some of the fish that I don't really, talk about or even talk about to my buddies that I've either lost or gotten broke off of, it to me was like a completely different category.
Mm.
It was a completely different class of fish that I just, again, I say I got my pants pulled down. I couldn't turn their head.
Yeah.
You know, it was a surprise bite, and they jump and they snap me off, or they run me into the rocks. It's a different animal.
Hmm.
Um, those are the ones I want to land, and I started seeing that with these bigger baits. So the 250 really became, um, man, when I started throwing it, it was a good time in the spring. But like anything, when you're new, you don't get bit on that stuff as much, and
Yeah.
you want bites, and then something else comes out. Like there's a bait that I had my eye on, and it dropped. Now I kind of put the 250 down, and I'm on to the next thing. Okay, I know the 250 can get bit, um, but when I go out by myself, that's when I'm throwing the giant stuff. That's when I'm throwing the 250. That's when I'm throwing the ghost. When I'm with my buddies, with friends, I'm just out to have a good time, catch fish,
Yeah.
like just throw whatever. A lot of the faster, choppy style glide baits, burning soft bait, stuff like that when I'm with friends. And, but when I'm by myself, I really focus on one bait. And, I get the GoPro rolling because I want that cast to catch,
Yeah.
with oddly enough, the first ghost fish came with my buddy. I was in the back of his boat, and I posted the cast to catch of that, and I was freaking out. Wasn't that long ago. It was probably like late fall, maybe a couple months ago, if that I caught it on the ghost. The 250 catches, I don't want to say numbers, but I've caught enough fish on the 250 to say, okay, that's a fun bait that I know will get bit.
Yeah.
The ghost, the ghost was a bait that, again, I knew guys caught smallmouth on a 250. I never saw a smallmouth on a ghost.
Right.
I might have seen a picture or two,
Hmm.
and I think even in some of those pictures, guys were kind of like, damn, that fish was pretty hungry. Nobody was really psyched on it. Nobody
Yeah.
was like, damn, that's awesome. Uh, I kind of took it as they were maybe questioning it,
Hmm.
like, damn,
Yeah.
did he really catch it? So, of course, with me throwing it, I wanted to have, the GoPro rolling,
Hmm.
but the Ghost has become, this is my live scope.
Mm.
That's it.
Yeah.
This is my eyeballs in the river. The amount of followers, my God. I mean, we all hear about it. We all talk
Hmm.
about the followers. This bait has showed me stuff that I didn't know was possible. The behavior of fish, and
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier about how low and clear the water was. Now, obviously, when it's that low, you want to find some deeper holes, right?
Mhm.
I don't like. I'm not going to throw a ghost in 2 inches of water,
Right.
um, but I'm going to go where I think the fish are. And I went to some spots this fall that really showed me the amount of followers. It didn't matter the size. It didn't matter if it was a 10-inch fish
Hmm.
or a 20 plus inch fish. A 1 pound fish, or a what I would say, I've seen plenty of fives. They didn't bite.
Hmm.
You don't get the bites all the time. But I literally see schools of them come out of the abyss, and you can see for a while. The river's that clear.
Yeah.
You got good glasses on. You can see. And as I'm slowly working the bait back, you just see this dark shadow in a V behind the bait, and it's following the damn thing. And as it gets closer, you start to see them peel off,
Yeah.
and it could be eight, 8 fish of all different sizes,
Mhm.
and they're all following it. And then two of them peel off, and then another two, and they don't spook. Like, they might not bite, but they're not spooking. They kind of hit the brakes, and they're done.
Yeah.
Um, they'll just chill there, and
Hmm.
I'm like literally 2 inches of line from my rod tip
Yeah.
in the water, and these fish are they give up on it.
Hmm.
Um, but it really showed me obviously, everybody talks about drawing power, and yeah, that bait draws them out for sure. I had
Yeah.
2 fish. One of them followed it so far, so close to my boat that he ran into the trolling motor
Yeah.
and obviously spooked off
Mhm.
then. And another fish followed it so far to the side of the boat that he literally hit the boat. And I'll never forget when he turned, the tail slap, his tail hitting the aluminum
Yeah.
boat, and it's dead quiet. And I'm like, I never
That's
experienced that
crazy.
before.
Yeah.
I'd never seen it before. And I'm like, what is going on? And the ones that do bite, even though they might not get hooked, the ones that do show aggression
Hmm.
and want to eat it, they're either T-boning it or they're headshotting it. Um, but those fish that are in those packs that are following it, they're the ones that make their way to the front.
Yeah.
You know, they're looking over their buddies and they're just, bam, I won it.
Hmm.
Um, and I think, again, like each fish, it takes a special fish, I think, to hit all these baits. I think it takes a certain personality and mentality of a fish to, eat a 250. I feel like 2 5-pound smallmouth, one's going to go nuts for this,
Hmm.
and the other one's going to just vanish and
Yeah.
not have anything to do with it. And I don't know if it's bite windows, but I truly believe that it's just a personality. Everybody has a different personality. We're not all built the same.
Mhm.
We all think differently.
Yeah.
We all have different tastes in life. I really believe that our smallmouth or any fish are the same way,
Hmm.
and it just takes that nut job of a 5-pounder to hopefully eat the stuff I'm offering.
Yeah.
That's what I really want to happen. So, um, but again, I'm using it now, the bigger baits, as mostly a search bait this time of year. I
Hmm.
want to see, not that the fish are there. I feel like I can, tell where the fish are going to be. I want to know their mood for the
Yeah.
day. I want to know how they're responding to the bait. Um, I have my rod and reel set up just for that bait. Now, obviously, I can throw some other stuff on it. I have thrown the 250 on it, but it's a double X heavy rod that
Hmm.
I bought just for the Ghost. Because, like I said, I didn't think anybody had done it. I wasn't trying to prove it to anybody. I looked at it as kind of a personal challenge. I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't know anybody who's got cast a catch on the Ghost. Like, and I just think it's nuts. Like,
Hmm.
who would want to do that? Like, my buddies think I'm nuts, and I'm like, yeah, well, yeah, a little bit,
Yeah.
for sure. I joke, I say I sniff paint fumes and eat paint chips for a living. That's what I do. So
Yeah.
it makes sense that I'm throwing, these baits for these fish. But now it's opened my eyes up for sure. The Ghost, the 250, even some of the soft stuff like the 9-inch, the thumper
Oh, the
tail,
thumper tail. Yeah.
Butch's rig, like some of the soft stuff on the bottom, like that's another big key. Um, and everybody thinks like, how are they going to eat that? How are they going to eat that? And then I show them the tooth marks, and they're all up here.
Hmm.
Everything here is clean.
Yeah.
It's always at the head, you know.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's soft baits and hard baits, anything of the large caliber. It takes a toll.
Yeah.
It takes a toll on you throwing it all day. I mean, an 8-inch, or a six ounce to 8.5 ounce bait, like um, I feel it, especially when I'm painting ceilings all day. And next thing you know, now I want to go throw this
Yeah.
giant bait all day. But I just want to see how far I can push it. I
Hmm.
really do. I don't care if I catch my PB on it. I don't care if I catch, you know, numbers on these baits. I just want to see what I can get them to eat. Maybe that's just being a little bit stubborn, but um, I just what I'm having fun doing. I want to see how far I can push it. I joke with my buddies, but I said, don't be surprised if I send you a picture of a frenzy come spring.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of the next. It's like I do have the rod to throw it. It's not that much heavier than the Ghost.
Hmm.
Um, I we'll see. It's
Yeah.
something that it's like, what's going to happen there. It's a $400 bait that would
Hmm.
most likely get bit off by a muskie, or it could happen.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's I mean, like I said, we lose baits up here for sure. I get bit
Hmm.
off. Um, you mentioned Cody, the another PA boy.
Yeah.
who kind of hooked us up here. Um, I had a tyrant that I had hooked him up with,
Hmm.
and he had gotten bit off on a tyrant. Damn, if it wasn't the same day, it was within a day or two apart. We
Hmm.
both got bit off, or he lost. We both lost our tyrant eights.
Yeah.
Um, and my buddy Mike Sholly, he was on a guide trip 2 weeks after I had gotten bit off.
Hmm.
And I had told him where it was at, and sure as shit, he found the bait,
Wow.
and it's still good. I got it hanging in the Christmas tree, but it's that's it. And
Wow.
he found it. It was there for I don't know, at least 2 weeks,
Hmm.
you know. And yeah, sure enough, they found he found it, and there we are. So it's amazing what happens. But I've lost some other stuff that like it's part of it.
Yeah.
Like when I got bit off on this, I said it is what it is. I knew it
Mhm.
was going to happen.
Right.
And I know I also knew I had two other tyrants in the Joy Thief colorway. And so when my buddy found this, and I found out Cody lost his, I said, dude, I'll get you. I said, you want to buy mine? Like because I was just grateful that I got this one back. You
Right.
know what I
Yeah.
mean? Um, so yeah, I hooked him up. I gave him all the hangman kit,
Yeah.
all the parts for it and whatnot. So yeah, this one I'm actually throwing on that beast
On the
hook.
beast. Yeah.
The three the 3/4 though, the 3/4 A dot, and the reason it's so heavy and it looks goofy because
Hmm.
maybe not goofy, but
Right.
it's it's a lot of weight on it is because of staying on the bottom
Right.
with
Yeah.
our current.
Yep.
If you're throwing out of the back of the boat, you want that down. You want it down. The Huddleston bait, same deal. Like keep them down, weigh them down. So even my hard baits, like I have a lot of weight, a lot of lead strips, a lot of hook weights,
Right.
board weights. Yeah, a lot. Like when guys are like, "Yeah, I put a half gram," and it's like, man, I'm more like 1.5 gram, if
Right.
not more.
Yeah.
Like, and even then, and it's just the current just slowly pushes the
Hmm.
bait up, and
Yeah.
try and get them to suspend properly. But yeah, I wish somebody else would come out and throw some of a Ghost, or there's another guy in PA. I have to remember. I can't remember his name. Maybe it's Dominic. He's throwing a frenzy,
Mm.
and he's throwing it in a current system, and he's catching a lot of pike. He doesn't. I don't think he's got a smallmouth on it. I know he was throwing a lot of the K9s. That was his thing. He was into the big stuff. I'm not sure where he's located, but I thought about reaching out to him because I'm like, he's a young dude, and I'm like, man, that kid, he's on to something. Like he's
Right.
somebody that I pay attention to see like, how far he's willing to push stuff,
Hmm.
and um my buddies again, they think I'm nuts, but I don't getting bit doesn't like it doesn't really do it for me. I'll go home after a 3, 4, 5 trip skunk, and it doesn't bother me. It makes me want to keep improving. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
um feeling getting bit just doesn't really it's nice, but at the same time, it's not all I'm after.
Hmm.
I want to catch them on my stuff and not just go out and get bit. You know, I think a lot of guys they kind of go down that rabbit hole with
Hmm.
they buy the big baits and they're disappointed when they don't get
Right.
the bites they're after.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that was a big learning curve for myself. I just told myself, you're looking for one bite a day.
Hmm.
That's it. Just get them to bite. Get
Yeah.
them to react even. Forget about getting them to bite. Just get them to react
Hmm.
and work off of that.
Hmm.
And that's kind of how the Ghost was. I fished the Ghost probably 3 or 4 different ways until I finally got it how I thought I liked it swimming.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just slow glide, just a very slow glide. But all these baits that are bigger, when they're triple jointed, they look a lot smaller in the water.
Yeah.
Not
Right.
so much this because the rear joints locked up, but um, a lot of these baits that have these so many joints, they look smaller than you think coming through the water. At least that's what I tell guys. Like, nah, it ain't that big. I'm like, it looks small in the water. It's
Yeah.
fine. Like they'll bite it, they'll hit it.
Yeah.
So
That's funny.
yeah, it's fun. I'm gonna keep experimenting with it.
Yeah, if you say you got to go out tomorrow, this is a question I like to ask when we're kind of winding it down because it kind of gets to hear you a little bit more as an angler. So we're going out tomorrow and you're gonna pick how these fish are gonna eat, whether we're dragging thumper tails or citizens on bottom or we're ripping the ghost around to the 250. Like, what is your I guess like favorite or dream way to catch, just a pile of smallmouth? If we could pick what we're gonna do tomorrow, what would it be for you?
Whew. Yeah, if I could set it up right, I would probably have a little bit of green stain in the water,
Mhm.
not gin clear, but a nice little tannic stain, something to mask the bait a little bit, because I think I've done a little bit better when the water's been dirtier, to be honest with you.
Mhm.
So maybe a little bit of some stain in the water and 4.5, 5 foot and suspending something, either a 250 or some kind of glide. I'll say a slow moving glide.
Mm.
Um, there's something about working the bait slow and them hitting it, as hard as they do. It
Yeah.
kind of catches you by surprise. And baits that you have to fish slow. Not that you
Mhm.
can't fish these baits fast.
Yeah.
It's just I prefer to fish them nice and slow. That seems to be how I'm getting bit.
Mhm.
Not all of them. There's baits that you have to get burned to get bit. Like there's other ones that's just how it goes. But I'd say that's probably a glide bait bite. I think treble hooks kind of took it over for me. The beast hook stuff is fun too. Um, but man, there's so many. I think those soft baits work so well that it's frustrating because you get bit so often
Yep.
and it's constant. It's like thump, 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 and it's like, man, I don't want those fish. They're
Mhm.
small fish, right? That's what I keep telling myself. And every once in a while, you'll lay into a nice one. Um, but I think I've had a little bit better luck with maybe I put more time into the hard baits, like this winter, something that I really want to, again, with the Tyrant throughout the fall. Like I got it early spring and fished it up top,
Mhm.
with the bubble in it.
Yeah.
And that thing just got murdered. That
Mm.
thing was just, I've never had a bait that got destroyed like that did, but I either could not keep them pinned or could not get them in the boat or they
Right.
were just missing.
Yeah.
Like I have no rhyme or reason for it. I tried Beast Hook, I've tried, the Hangman kit, I've tried my own rigging. I destroyed one, dissected it, ripped out the harness, and tried to make my own line through.
Mm.
There's a couple line through baits that I like.
Yeah.
Um, and the reason I hung on to the Tyrant so much is because it's just innovative. It's
Right.
just cool what he did with it.
Yeah.
It's unique. I don't have anything else like it. You know, I think they're worth every penny for sure because of the different ways you can fish it.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know any other soft bait that you could fish in multiple columns with
Right.
different hooks and just change some parts out.
Mhm.
That's what drove me to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm glad he came out with the 8 because I'll be honest with you, I almost bought a 10
10's
just to
massive.
see. Yeah,
Yeah. The 10 is
yeah,
massive bait.
yeah. It seems like it. So I feel like that 7 and 8 inch range bait is, and maybe a little bit skinnier
Yep.
profile.
Yeah.
Um, is good for my fish. I really do. I think I like that size. I like an 8 inch size. This winter I'm really going to be throwing the Huds again.
Mm.
Throwing the 8 inch Huddleston a lot, and I got the crimps, the wires. I'm making my stingers. Some with, some without.
Yeah.
Again, just figuring out what will work for myself.
Hmm.
Um, I shy away from stingers though, just because I've seen too many fish killed on a trap
Yeah.
hook.
You're right.
It's you don't think they're gonna swallow that far of the bait, and I
But when
can
they
tell you,
do,
I got some 316 baits that are gone.
right.
They're gone. They're not. Where'd the bait go?
Hmm.
I'm looking up it's down its throat.
Hmm.
Top rig treble
Yep.
type stuff.
Yeah.
So that'd be my favorite way to go. What about yourself? What about there in Michigan? What's your
Ooh.
what do
Man,
you
well,
like
so
favorite way?
out on St. Clair, it is like what we've like always had really good luck with is like dragon dark sleepers and stuff. So, dude, dragon bottom, like a big soft bait, whether it's like a HUD 68 or a HUD 8 inch or a Citizen 7. I mean, dude, like, there's no better. I fell in love with soft baits this year just because you're just cranking. After 30 casts, you're not really even thinking you're gonna get a bite, and then all of a sudden it's just boom, just a tick, and you reel
Yeah,
down. You can feel that fish, and you were talking about how the smallmouth you can feel them biting, and I mean, like in the river that I used to fish and live on, you could feel them pick the bait up, and you could feel them like gum it and like chase the bait while you're
yeah,
reeling it in,
yeah,
and such a pain in the ass, but man, like you said, when one actually
yeah,
gets it and you reel down and you can crack that thing, even with largemouth too, it's just, dude, it's hard to beat. It is hard to
yeah.
beat.
Yeah, soft baits are fun for sure. My buddy got into a couple of the soft baits this year, the bigger soft baits, and yeah, it's definitely something that I want to expand more. I have them. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I every soft bait drop that I have am a fan of. I usually buy them, even if it's an off the wall color. One of my favorites with Mike's baits was Keith's color.
Oh
That
yeah,
misfit. Like
misfit.
man, like that was a great one, and
Yeah.
I still have it in the 6 and the 7, but I'd only have like one of each. Yeah, and that's just man, it's something about that color. It's simple.
Hmm.
It's just not. I don't know what it is about it, but it might be because I had some good fish on it,
Right.
right? Like it's like a confidence color. Um, but I got baits that other guys throw that I don't have confidence in,
Mhm.
and they swear by.
Right.
Now is it because they fish it differently? And we didn't really touch on this much, but when it comes to color, I'm 75% the fish are going to eat because the way the bait is
Yeah.
moving, 25% color. And I
Mhm.
might even go down further than that. I'm not a big fan of color. I know
Mhm.
guys that they look at baits, they want to buy it because that's a sick color. That's a
Right.
sick color. And it's like, dude, I don't care.
Yeah.
Give me it and let me work it. I'll see if they'll eat it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So I don't get too. I know some guys get crazy into color. I'm kind of if it looks kind of something bait fishy, shaddy, and maybe it's something a little loud for
Yeah.
stained water. If we get a rise in the water, whether that's a dark bait, but black always does good.
Yeah.
Something black, something dark.
One thing I wanted to show you before we end this. So this is actually when you guys are hearing this, I'll be doing a bait review about it this week. But have you seen this thing? I don't know.
Good grief, I have.
Dude,
Yeah,
this
I
thing,
have.
so I was holding up the Cave Towns Dweller. This thing, I am very excited to fish this thing in the spring, like out on St. Clair and just dragging it. Like, dude, I have no confidence in a jig, but I mean, dude, just looking at this, like they're gonna smash this thing. And like,
What hook are they asking on that?
uh, I
Like
think.
a 14 on?
Oh no, this is like a 6-aught. I don't think it's an 8-aught. I think it's a 6, but like you can fish it with that huge Ike's monster jig. Like he sells the monster jigs to fish it on. But I want to say the bait
Yeah,
is so it's an 8-inch craw, and then I think it's a 3/4 ounce weight I have on here with the flipping hook or with the beast hook. And dude, this thing, like if I
good
had a big
grief.
river system with smallmouth, I feel like if you just drag this thing like a tube long enough, you will get an absolute mongoloid of a
Dude, you
fish to eat
you
it.
nailed it. You nailed it because we didn't talk about forage much, but like, oh my God, if you're on a good bite on the Susquehanna,
Mhm.
you look down at the end of the day and your boat is just crayfish
Oh yeah,
everywhere. There's constantly, oh yeah, spitting them out. So that's funny that there's something like that.
yeah,
Yeah, that'd be cool. I'd love to see somebody. I know they would touch it.
mhm,
They're so curious.
yeah.
They probably would eat that thing. I've seen some crazy stuff out there, and I love it, man. I love the innovative stuff. It's pretty neat.
Well, dude, like you'd probably hook a fish and you would think it was a smallmouth, but it's actually a 30-pound catfish. That would definitely
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
happen. You would probably rail a catfish with
yeah.
this thing.
That's a wintertime thing when we're fishing winter
Oh,
holes.
okay.
It's that seems to, yeah, that seems to be when they, I mean, you catch them accidentally, just,
Yeah.
I mean, they'll chase down a bait,
Right.
they will. The channels will, but the flatheads, yeah, they'll eat anything. And it's interesting. It'd be fun. Like I said, I know a guy, he goes out every year and he just wants to catch the biggest flathead on the
Yeah.
lightest tackle. It just gets,
Yeah.
and he's doing it. It's every cast. And the wintering hole below him is where smallmouth are,
Mm.
is where I'd be set up. And every time I look back, there he is, just, just
Taking
going to
fish for
town,
forty-five
and
minutes.
he's
Yeah.
catching them. Yeah, yeah, he's catching them. It's nuts. And, so yeah, that's I like seeing baits like that though. Like,
Yeah.
and also I like what you're doing too. Like I've listened to some of the bait reviews, and um, not that I need any more baits, but like there's so many baits that guys like yourself do a review of,
Hmm.
and you talk about it. You show it and explain it, and then the next thing you know, I'm looking it up and
Hmm.
looking at where they're located
Yeah.
and the fish picks and just listening to their backstory, again, and
Mhm.
just how the company is, and then because how else are you going to know about stuff, right?
Right.
Like you need guys like yourself that have a passion for this stuff, and um, I saw you got the hats on
Mm.
pre-order. Like guys need to. I told my buddies today. I said there's 3 or 4 guys that would buy that hat just because. Hey, I was welcomed on Adrian's
Right.
podcast,
Yeah.
and like my buddies would support that. You need that, you got to
Mm.
support the companies that you like, and
Yeah.
whether it's a hat, a shirt, obviously the bait, whatever it is, because people are doing some cool stuff, and there's not enough guys getting the recognition for it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it might just be a passion project and fun for you, but it's still work. It's
Hmm.
still it's content that we get to watch. Just we don't think about it. Like you
Right.
don't think about, man, he had to go back and think about what he wanted to do for a video and make it and edit
Hmm.
it, and the recording, the editing,
Yeah.
and all the sound and audio. There's a lot that goes into it.
Hmm.
um which is why I like Cody. I always thought what he's doing
Yeah.
there with his background is pretty cool as
Hmm.
well. And but yeah, there needs to be more guys out there supporting the companies and just spreading the word, trying to be a little bit more positive. um that's what I try and do, is just
Right.
try and spread as much info as I can without giving up the goose. I'm obviously not going to give someone, hey, here's a coordinate ABC
Yeah.
or whatever, which we don't even run that stuff on the
Right.
river. Some guys do. Some guys run electronics. I have an electronic on my boat, but it ain't the scope or anything.
Yeah.
It's for, I'm not sniping. It's for water temp, and damn, it's dirty. How deep am I sitting in it?
Yeah.
Stuff
Yeah.
like that. So yeah.
Heck yeah, man. Well, Kyle, where can the people follow you if they're not familiar with you or following you already?
Oh man. So I just have my Facebook and an Instagram. My Facebook's just my name, Kyle Reigle, and then I have my Instagram is Lateral Painter. My business name is Lateral Lines Painting. I wanted to try to incorporate my painting business with
Yeah.
fish somehow.
Heck yeah.
I even reached out. I reached out to Lateral Vision
Uh-huh.
Fishing with, you mentioned Matty Wong, and I
Yeah.
I emailed and said, hey, I'm starting my business. I really like the Lateral name, and and they said, that's totally cool. You're not ripping it. You can't trademark just Lateral.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're like, it's Lateral Lines Painting. It's different, but that's. I kind of got it from there. There's a little inspiration there. But yeah, Lateral Painter on Instagram. I talked to Kyle from Throwback, and he says, dude, you got to get on your Instagram more. Like, start,
Yeah. That's what I was gonna say
putting some
too.
stuff up. And yeah, it's something that I have. My God, I have a lot of video,
Hmm.
a lot of GoPro stuff. I got a lot of bloopers, a lot of weird stuff, and a lot of good fishing content. I'm never going to do like, YouTube stuff or
Right.
anything, but gotta start getting a little more active on Instagram, and because I kind of prefer that, to be honest with you. I feel
Hmm.
like there's some toxic stuff on Facebook that can just spiral out of
Yeah.
control, but Instagram is just, it's what you make it.
Hmm.
And I like the content on there. So yeah, that's the only two I'm on.
Heck yeah.
Um,
I was gonna
so
say if
yeah,
you guys since your Instagram isn't, up to par with everything you're doing and kinda universe is, if you guys are a part of Swimbait Universe, look up Kyle's name and scroll through his posts because like I said, he's got the Ghost, he's
yep,
got the 250, hammering him on the TK a couple within the last couple weeks. I mean, just a couple like a lot of cool posts that I had seen just from scrolling for a couple minutes. And you can scroll through that stuff and see what we're talking about, and you can see kind of the where like the spots he's fishing and kind of the water type he's looking at, and see him all bundled up and freezing his
yeah,
butt off because the water's 40 degrees and the air is probably 35 degrees. So you guys can get a
oh
grasp
yeah,
of the whole story we got to hear today.
for sure. No, man, thanks for having me. I appreciate this. And thank you for doing what you're doing, putting content out there. Like for real, this is a big deal to me. To have guys like yourself that make the content, and I don't get to go on my other favorite podcasts and say, hey, thank you guys.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a super chat donation or something, or subscribe to them. And
Yeah.
there's several ways to support creators such as yourself. So it definitely needs to be some more guys helping everybody out.
Mm.
So, but no, I really want to thank you for having me on. It was fun. Anytime you want to talk, I can talk for days about fishing, and there's several other stories and stuff that I could get into as far as the climates and what I look for. And
Mhm.
you ever want to talk about it some more, let me know. I'm glad to talk to you about it.
Yeah, I was gonna say let's meet back up maybe towards the beginning of spring or a little bit after spring, kind of after your fish start to pick up a little bit more, and we can talk about what you've been doing. We
Sure.
can kind of elaborate on what you were doing between now and then, and kind of hear what your fish were doing this winter. If you guys had a
Yeah.
hard winter, if you were able to bang them up from the bank or whatever else it may be.
I'll be changing the way this weather's looking. I'll be changing hooks 5 times every day because I won't be able to get out. But now we'll see. I got high hopes. I'll find some water somewhere. We'll see.
Heck
We'll
yeah,
we'll
man.
we'll keep you in tune.
Hell yeah, dude. Well, as always, I'll have all Kyle's stuff linked in the description so you guys can go follow him if you're not already on Instagram, and I'll put his Facebook on there too so you guys can go follow him. As always, if you guys aren't following the podcast, Scales and Tails underscore media on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. This stuff was starting to go back up on YouTube again. Well, I'm saying that as you guys have watched the last 3 episodes, but if you guys like watching on YouTube, sometimes we'll have videos, sometimes it'll just be the audio on YouTube. But as always, it's on Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, whatever else this place gets distributed. I can't remember all of them. But outside of that, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and we'll talk to you guys next time. See you guys.